Hey everybody, welcome to Facebook Live with the CACs Connect. My name's Mark Jones and I'm the CEO of Central Alberta Child Advocacy Centre, and pleased to be joined by two really great friends of not only mine but of the CAC network in Alberta. I've got Cheryl Debo, who is the CEO of the Zebra Centre in Edmonton, and Karen Orser joining us from Calgary, from the Calgary Area Child Advocacy Centre. So really happy to have you here, and you know, it's some great things happening, not only in our areas but in this whole province, and that's exciting things. So Karen and Cheryl will just kind of have a conversation today, just so that people can have an understanding what a child advocacy center is, and the kinds of things that we do, and how they can help and get involved in the process. And you know, with three of us on here, we're good enough friends that we're not going to worry if we interrupt each other. So because that's an expectation, especially when you're dealing with me. But so the three of us are part of a network of child advocacy centers in Alberta, and over the course of the last couple of years, we've kind of worked really hard on connecting and bringing in the whole province, all the CACs together. So maybe Cheryl or Karen, you would like to talk a little bit about your centers, and then we can maybe talk a little bit about the other ones we have in the province, and then go from there.
Okay. Do you want me to start, Karen, or?
Yeah, you start.
Okay.
Plus, Mark, you need to tell us about yours too.
Yeah, I'll do that for sure.
So the Zebra Child Protection Center is also a child advocacy center, and was founded in 2002, and it's the first of its kind in Canada. So we're celebrating our 18th year this year, and it was created out of a response in the community out of our recognition that young people, children, needed a place to go to tell their story that was safe and that reflected them. Because prior to the creation of Zebra, they would go to a police station to tell their story. And so it was recognized that that wasn't the most supportive way for young people to come in and give their interview. So that's kind of how Zebra got its roots. And so we're a multidisciplinary center, and we have our partners here from the police, from RCMP, Alberta Health Services, Children's Services, and then my nonprofit center staff. And we also have partners outside of the building in the Crown's office, and we have the Child and Adolescent Protection Center over at the Stollery Hospital as well. So some of our partners are in the building, some are out of the building. That is different throughout all the CACs, and I'm sure my friends will speak to what happens within their CAC. So with our center, it's a place where young kids can come and tell their story and have their interview with the police and or children's services in a supportive way. And our nonprofit center staff are kind of the advocates for those young people, which assist them in having a voice through the process, whether it's the investigation or the court process. We also support young people through the court process, and we do court preparation for kids so that they're prepared for what to expect if they go to court with their case. That's in essence, I guess, the moving parts of our CAC. I won't go too much into detail because I'm sure that both Karen and Mark will have lots to say that will fill in any gaps that I have.
Awesome. Sure. Thanks, Cheryl. Go ahead, Karen.
Sure. So I guess I would just add the Calgary Child Advocacy Center, which was the Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Center before, is only about 8 years old. So we really looked to Zebra and Boost in Toronto and lots of the other child advocacy centers when we were building this center. We're lucky to be sandwiched we're up in the northwest of Calgary, between the Children's Hospital and the university. In the Child Development Center. So we've got our partners who are on site are the RCMP, Calgary Police, we have Alberta Health Services, the Child Abuse Service, so the therapy team, and also the medical team, as well as the Crown and Children's Services. So they're our main partners. And then our, of course, CCAC nonprofit group of staff provide things like a child life specialist and a forensic interview specialist. We have facility dogs, a victim support team. We also have a prenatal outreach support program here at the Calgary Center. So I think what I would add, Cheryl, is just that for people that don't know about a CAC. And I think that's what's really exciting to me about CACs and the opportunity to be involved here is we know CACs are a really popular model in the States, but they're not as much in Canada. There might be, you would probably know, maybe 25 in different stages of development here. So, and yet, you know, the work that we do, and I don't think that the average person knows until you come in and see the place, or I don't think the average person knows what a child advocacy center does and much about the model. So we really exist here in Calgary, and I know that we have a lot of similarities in terms of the criteria, but we exist to serve the kind of the top 15% of child abuse cases, mostly sexual abuse or severe and complex physical abuse, but where there's already multi-system involvement, and it just makes sense for partners to communicate, share information, and work together so that kids and families get a really seamless support throughout their journey, from the minute a case comes through our center, all the way through, a forensic interview, a medical exam, court prep, like you said. So that's really the beauty of a child advocacy center. Is it's about being trauma informed and really helping families through this in the best way that they can, by sharing information and collaborating. It's multidisciplinary and integrated practice like I've never seen before. And that's what I think is so exciting. And then I'm really happy to be a part of this provincial network, especially because I think there's so much opportunity to have a bigger voice and to build awareness about child abuse and child maltreatment, and how as a community we need to respond to that when we're all aligned in our messaging. And so I'm really excited to be able to work so closely with all of the CACs, and you two have been a big part of building this network. So thank you for that and for organizing this, Mark.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
a good kind of our understanding of what a CAC is. I think that the thing that catches me the most is, we have all of these agencies, ministerial agencies that do work, and their mandate is, the protection of the child, educating the child, making sure their medical needs are being met. But those organizations' databases are not linked to each other. So Child Advocacy Center has brought that as part of their MDT, or a multidisciplinary team. We always work in acronyms, the CAC and the MDT and all these other stuff. But for people to understand, the multidisciplinary team is bringing in all of those ministerial organizations into one room so that you can triage cases and files and look at them, that rather than a police officer going to children's services building, children's services going to the hospital, looping in the education world, bringing any of your other organizations like your for us the Central Alberta Sexual Assault Center. You bring those organizations together into one room, you can do some pretty complex conversations that are saving hours, and sometimes it's something would be stretched over a week to two, you can do in much quicker time. But I think we would be, of the three of us here, the Central Alberta would be the new baby. I mean, we're just a little over 2 years old, and we actually, to be honest with you, we were not looking at developing a child advocacy center originally. Ours was out of a rash of suicides in Central Alberta that we felt important that we needed to look at something in the mental health world. I remember being at the funeral of Lindsay Moore, and I talk about Lindsay at great lengths because she was an outstanding person and comes from a great family, but she had mental health issues and suffered a little bit from depression and anxiety. And at her funeral, there was just a huge group of people there that when we met afterwards, we said, let's look at doing something for the mental health and addictions world. And it was a meeting, kind of a chance meeting, that we were at a presentation that Sheldon Kennedy did. And he got reconnected with one of the people that played with him in Swift Current, who's now our board chair, Terry Lowen. And Sheldon said, why don't you come down and have a look and see what we do in Calgary? And that trip down there with about 8 of us in the vehicle, that kind of springboarded the whole thing. So, then it's been a process, kind of a dream since 2015 that we would get this going. Opened in 2017, and at 1:30 this afternoon, we're back to the college grounds where we have the land has been given to us by the college to build a building, which we're hoping to be able to get that up and, start shovel in the ground here in the hopefully the not too distant future. So it's exciting times for us. But I would say for all those people that are out there listening to this or who will see it later, the collaboration and commitment amongst the CACs in Alberta, I think, is a gift of things for our future generations coming down to things like the sharing of information and not the protection of, we're not going to share this. At the end of the day, we've saved thousands of hours of time by the stuff that the Zebra Center and the Calgary area have shared with us. And we hope one day to be able to reciprocate back and forth with that. So, I look at that and I think if we were to talk a little bit how our government is focused on child advocacy centers and the work that we're doing. I know we have the Caribou Center in Grand Prairie, but we're also pretty excited because we have Little Bear coming on stream in Lloyd and the Waypoints in Fort Mac. Yep. And then we have the Chinook Sexual Assault Support Center in Lethbridge, and then SARC in Medicine Hat. So it's pretty exciting for those of us that are operational to be able to kind of welcome new members into the CAC fold. So, and then we won't have the baby label anymore. We'll be one kind of the seasoned veterans. So I guess what I would ask, a question I'd ask that people we get asked often is maybe we could how do you everybody think that we've effectively changed the process in past to what it looks like now in the world of whether it maybe one of us would talk in abuse and one of us could talk, whether it's sexual or physical, and then we could also talk a little bit about internet and those kinds of things, that those cases that come our way. How's life different for a child that would come to a child advocacy center as opposed to how they did in the past?
I know, Mark, here in Edmonton, previously, without the CAC Zebra Center, a young person would likely go to a police station if that's who their first report went to, or they might be at a Child Protection Services office. They would need to tell their story probably multiple times to multiple parties because we weren't operating in a multidisciplinary way before. And they would likely end up at a police station at some point, which is basically very brick and mortar. It's not child friendly. It's not built to be that way. And so it could be even at the same time the perpetrator of their abuse was in the same building. So it was done in a way that was, I guess, a response at that time within the community that didn't look necessarily at what the research had said was the best way to respond to child abuse, which is in a multidisciplinary way. So now when a young person comes to our center here at the Zebra Center or any of your CACs as well, the partners are there in order for that young person to come in and tell their story and hopefully tell their story once rather than to multiple parties, and have support from the nonprofit agency staff throughout that process of telling their story and through their journey, through their investigative and then perhaps court, those kind of things. Or if they're requiring trauma treatment services, we have therapists here that can provide that. So it's a bit of a one-stop shop, I like to say, in the sense of the young person comes here and we respond to them as opposed to them going to multiple different areas and having to tell their story more than once. We know that that's very difficult for young people to have to tell their story repetitively, and we should try and minimize that. And I think this, the way that we're set up does that very well. And I think that would be the big components of the difference from, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago to today. And it's really about how the adults have come together to support young people rather than a young person and their caregiver going to multiple places. And it's more effective. We have also found, if you look previously to today's data, we're getting more convictions in court. We went up from 20% to more over 60% today over the course of 15 years. So it does have some really good impacts in terms of follow through and outcomes for young people going forward.
I think you touched on something really important there, Cheryl. It's about effectiveness as well. So, and court outcomes are really important, but I remember hearing, we had a tour and somebody had come in from a different province and there wasn't a CAC in their community and they were trying to figure out how they could do this better. And one of the things she said was, sometimes these kids are being interviewed like 4 times. And by that time, the interview just gets thrown away. And so it's just not a good use of resources. It's not good for kids. It's not effective. There's a big piece of that. I would say also a big difference, Mark, is it really is a philosophical shift in how you do your work. So when you, and a real commitment to that. So we have worked really hard, and I know you all do, because even though we might look different in terms of our physical spaces, it doesn't mean that the integration is any different because you have more partners on site or not, because it really is a true commitment from all the partners to collaborate. So while we might have our staff sergeants with Calgary Police and the kitty corner to their office is a manager at Children's Services, it's so easy to share information, but a lot of other things happen here, like case conferences and case reviews, and all of us have triage every morning or files that come through, and every partner's at the table sharing information like that. That's the kind of stuff that happens at an advocacy center that doesn't necessarily happen without the commitment to integrated practice.
Yeah, so one of the things that I noticed right off, and this is from my former life of being a school administrator, when a child would disclose to a teacher or to an administrator, I remember one case in particular, my last year of being a principal, that within a matter of 2.5 hours, that young lad had shared his story 4 times before leaving the halls of our school with, myself, and then calling in Children's Service, RCMP. So I can't stress it enough. What you're both saying is for them to be able to come to one place and have a forensic interview in a child-friendly atmosphere, as opposed to going to some, like there's nothing worse than going what you watch on TV and you see those interview rooms. Well, that's what it was like. Now they're child-friendly, and we have professionally trained interviewers, forensic interviewers, to be able to do that. So I know in ours, our stats are 96% of our interviews that we've done, the child's only had to do it once. And a lot of the times when the 4% that had to do it a second time was lots of times is because the child has said, I remember more things. I'd like to talk more. So to me, that's a huge success. But when you talk, Cheryl, about the conviction rates going up, one of the other things that we've noticed here too is that we have far more guilty pleas so the child doesn't even have to go through the court process. So which is significant. I think it's a really neat thing. I did get asked a question that I would like, and we don't have one of these, but I know both of you do. But people love animals, and they love to be know that something is helping. I mean, we're on the wait list to be able to get a court support and comfort dog, but I know both of your organizations have them. Can you just talk a little bit about what that brings to the process that wasn't there in the past?
You go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay. We've had our we've had our dog program for quite a few years now. It's a VIP, which is very important pause programs. And they're a very important part of what we do here at the center, and they're integral to the work and the support for young people. So our dogs will go through the same journey with the child and go down that path with them if that's a fit, if the child wants a dog to be part of their journey. So when they come in to be interviewed, a dog may be sitting with them during their interview just to add support for them and comfort. And it is very comforting and supporting. I'll tell you a story about our one dog. We had somebody who was doing an interview with a young person, and they just weren't being able to engage and get the information that they needed. And the young person just wasn't opening up in the same way. So they left the interview room, the interviewer, and they went to talk to their partner who was monitoring the interview in another room. And when they left, the young person turned to the dog and told their entire story. And it speaks volumes to what those dogs do for kids in terms of grounding, safety, and just feeling kind of that calmness that they bring to it. Our dogs also go to court with young people, and they can sit through the testimony throughout. We tested that with the court courts, I don't know how many years ago now. I feel like it's about 8 years ago. And at first there wasn't an openness with that, especially from defense lawyers. But now when our dog goes to court, they know him by name, and he's an accepted member at the courthouse, and he's a valued member. So yes, certainly the dog program has been very helpful for young people, but also for our staff. The work that we do and the situations that we deal with are quite traumatic, not only for the young people who have experienced them, but the staff who hear the stories ongoing and day out. And the dogs bring a calmness for us too. And I think that, again, it's another way of kind of working with trauma with both children and adults. And those dogs are a really important part of the team, and they're very valued. So I'll let Karen add some more. I know you have your program.
I think you got it covered. Like, they are such a valued part of the team. We've got Axel on Webster. Webster does mostly court support, but he'll also do interviews. And Axel works with our forensic interview and does mostly interviews. But we're always really grateful also for the PALS dogs. I don't know if you guys have PALS dogs, but they're often in, they're not facility dogs, but they're like comfort pets, and they come in our child space. And a big part of their job is also supporting staff. People are excited to see them. It just kind of brings the stress down in the middle of a day. And, you know, it was like maybe a month ago, things were really stressful, and I was in my office and Webster came in, and Webster wasn't working that day, but him and Heather had just popped by, and he came in and just put his head right in my lap. Like, it was really interesting to me how he could just sense stress and anxiety, and it was lovely. So they're just such an important part of the team for everybody.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that, because I know that you know, people, when they see the dogs there, like we have Harley here, who's part of our victim services, and anytime you even know Harley's coming anywhere near the building, everyone's eyes light up, and I know when my eyes light up, I could only imagine that of an 8 or 9-year-old child that has a dog, you know, in that support and comfort. So I think they're just such an integral part of what we do. So you know, thanks for sharing that part of it. I know one of the things that that we always talk about is that the long-term effects on trauma, and trauma that has not had any intervention on. And I know, can we just touch a little bit on the difference between, you know, the children? We know that those that are a lot of our mental health and addiction issues that we have in our late adolescents and adults is some form of childhood trauma that wasn't, you know, dealt with in a, you know, the child didn't have any resources to access. Where now, with what we're doing here, can we touch a little bit on the difference now that you know, the long-term effects of people having opportunities to have counseling right away, and families having the support that's going to save us down the road?
I can start. I certainly think that in terms of services and support for the kids and families that come through the center, that's a really important piece, and mitigates, being able to access services, mitigates and like promotes healing and all the things that are important in the future. But I also would say that's one of the reasons I think, like, we have prevention as an important pillar still, and strategic direction at our center, because I think we recognize, because we know more about brain development and brain science and all of the work that the Palix Foundation has done in this province over the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years. We really do recognize the importance of preventing trauma now. And so to see the cases that we see and do the work that we do, we recognize the importance of also playing and having a big voice in the community around awareness and prevention, and helping the community know what to do if they recognize abuse, if they suspect abuse, because as a community, as a broad community, the more trauma that we can prevent in the first place, that's really where we want to focus heavily. So a big piece of our work is both, like, after an incident has occurred, but also trying to prevent future trauma. And I think that we need to do them both as CACs.
Yeah. I would just add and echo a lot of what Karen has said in terms of when a young person comes here, and we can offer the supports that they need, whether it's, trauma treatment services program that we have here, or supports through children's services, those kind of things. But going beyond that, one of the things we always talk about when we're in the community in terms of our center is that child abuse is a community responsibility. It's not the police responsibility or children's services or my nonprofit Zebra Center staff or Alberta Health Services. It's a community kind of response that it requires, and it requires it before any abuse even happens, right? So it's a continuum, and I like what you had said, Karen, that we have to look at how we can prevent this from occurring, and then if it does occur, how do we support young people and their non-offending caregivers through that process? So looking to the community for that. One of the things that we do at Zebra is we tap into the community resources. We have a very extensive volunteer program, over 100 folks from the community. And again, it's creating that awareness in the community, because those are our ambassadors. They go back to the community and they have a certain level of knowledge now, and they can reach out into the community in terms of getting better community involvement around what the issues are. And I think even when we look at what's happening now in Alberta around the pandemic, it is really about asking community to look out for one another. If you know a family who is stressed now or even was stressed before the pandemic, reach out to them, see how they're doing, those kind of things, whether it's your neighbor or family or what have you. But I think that's really one of the learnings I've had from being at Zebra, is that this is really very much a community approach to working with young people who have experienced abuse, as well as trying to prevent that from happening within the community.
Yeah. I might even just add, I think this is a real area of continued discussion provincially and across the country, now as CACs evolve collectively as well, in terms of how we might tackle some of that stuff and where our work fits within our communities. But we even have an education coordinator here, and her main role is to work with schools. We've got some videos called A School's Role, and those are really great videos for teachers. So we're really trying to think differently about how we can do some of that prevention work and reach some of the community in different ways. So
nice.
So one thing I would interject, this is what I've noticed over 2 years too, is the world of abuse is not something that society really ever wants to talk about. And we always had that catchphrase when we started, let's make the invisible visible, let's talk about it. And I think, with the provincial voice that we've had and the work that's happening here, I think more and more people are starting to talk about it and ask the question, how do we get involved? And I think of where we started, 4 years ago, but when we opened our door 2 years ago, what we've learned and what we've gleaned from that, but to have the community of Central Alberta saying, what can we do? How do we get involved in this? And that was never there before. That was always when we would talk, we're just not going to talk about that right now, or let's, no, not in our backyard,
right?
That kind of stuff. Well, it's in our backyards, right? So, and Cheryl, when you said that, this pandemic has created certain hardships for lots of for our whole world community, but when you look at the vulnerable community, it has created even more serious hardships for many of them. So you touched on this. It's almost like we're following a note here, that if I was to look down at my 5th bullet of things to talk about, you were already there. And how do we get our communities? We have a certain portion of our communities are involved in this, but how do we continue as an organization to get our community involved? What are some things that our community people can do for child advocacy centers? Like if someone's watching right now and they say, hey, I'd like to help them, what's something that we could say to them? Here's something you could do for us today or tomorrow to be involved. Who would like to tackle that?
I can start off if you want, Karen.
Sure.
I think one of the big pieces for us is if people are interested in volunteering in any capacity, we have a variety of volunteer roles. Some of our volunteers work directly with supporting children as advocates, or they might do court accompaniment, or they might even be volunteers that go to our fundraising events and help support there. We even have one volunteer who's an expert in research. So we have quite a variety of people who bring a variety of skills from the community and come here and support us. So I would encourage people, if you're interested in something like that. I'd also say we're definitely an agency, and as all of us are in terms of the CACs, that looks towards fundraising opportunities. I mean, I would encourage, if people can donate, certainly to consider that. Yeah, I think those are probably the major pieces of how the community can support us as well. I think if you're able to continue to kind of look at what we're putting out within social media and get that word out there, and be okay to talk about child abuse. Because like you said, Mark, I think it has been a bit of a stigma through the years. And actually talking about it and shining that light on it is how we can prevent and respond to it in an appropriate way. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage people to kind of look at those social media platforms on an ongoing basis and share them with others. Yeah, those are probably the ways that I would suggest.
I think those are great.
Yeah. No, that you've pretty much said everything there, Cheryl, which is good, because people have a real want to help children and be helpful, but lots of times they don't know. And I would say, pick up the phone no matter where you are in the province, pick up the phone and look to see how you could be involved in one of those. And I know we have a provincial, and I could put a plug in for this now and I'll put it again after, but we do have a provincial website, Alberta CACs.ca, where you could, no matter where you are in the province, you could click on any one of those sites to get information to say how you would get connected. And Karen, if I could just go and say, springboard off of what you said a little bit earlier about your education program, and I know that's something that all of the CACs are looking at being involved in. And on your website, I know if people are looking at that, you have a couple programs under your education. If they were to go to the Calgary Area Child Advocacy Center and go across to the education on the scroll bar, click down on that, you have your trauma training one, and then what to do if you suspect abuse. So there's some really good programs, which I might mention are free for people to be able to access. And free is a good thing, but if people see that, it kind of gives them an idea of what to do if they suspect abuse and where to go, because there is an actual process to follow when a child does disclose or says something. And I know that's the fear of many people. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that and what the process they could go through.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, Mark, what you're saying is really important. I think one of the things we always want to remind the community and encourage people to remember is it does take a village, and without getting too much here, but it can feel like a little bit individualistic sometimes, and we all want to mind our own business, and it's not our business. But child abuse is everybody's business, and if you have your spidey senses are tingling, and if there's kids you're concerned about, kids need protective factors. They need coaches, they need teachers, they need lots of people in the community who care about them, who are watching them, who are there, just asking them how their day was, and just making sure they're okay. And so we always want to encourage people to be a protective factor, like make a few minutes to make eye contact with kids and ask how they're doing. And I think that's a small thing that we can all do, and never think it's not your business, because it's all of our business to raise healthy kids together. Yeah,
and at the end of the day, for all of us to kind of, to have that belief that it does take the village, and I think everybody should want to be a part of the village, and it's an easy village to join, right? And you just, people have said to me more than once, how do you do what you're doing? It's pretty deep and dark, and I just share the story, and I'll never forget this, because it was the first child ever interviewed at the Central Alberta Child Advocacy Center, and we were lucky enough to have Dr. Sarah McDonald from the Calgary Area Child Advocacy Center came up and did our first forensic interview for us. And I'll never forget that day that this little girl, we had worked with her, and she wasn't a little girl by any, she was 16 years old, but she was in a situation where she was not really comfortable to come. But when she came in for her forensic interview that day, she was so nervous and so anxious. And what I saw transform over 2 hours was almost like life being breathed back in to a human that didn't feel worthy or feel that really she had anything going for her. And that was in 2 hours. And I looked at her, and I'll never forget, and it's emotional for all of us there, because it's our first one. You'll never forget it. When we gave her the quilt that we give to all the kids to signify the wraparound supports, and the Calgary Flames had sent in a bunch of Harvey the Hounds, and we gave her one of those. And I just remember when she was leaving, she walked down our little hallway and she turned back, and the thing that she said to us, she says, "I feel like I have my life back."
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, that's why we do what we're doing. So
Yeah.
I look, and we all have those stories that we can share. And it's the more we're involved in it, and the more we're part of the village, the more rewarding the village is. And so my hat's off to both of you for all the things that you do on a daily basis to lead your teams and organizations and help everybody else out. But Cheryl, you talked a little bit about collaboration and working together, and COVID, you mentioned it a little bit, which is like the whoever thought in January that we would be having the world that we have right now. But we kind of, as an organization, all of us seized that opportunity to get the word out together, to let people in the province of Alberta that our kids can't wait. And that's the campaign we started that. And Karen, you alluded to it just a little bit there, saying, our kids, they don't have that coach, and they don't have that teacher, and all those people that they were relying on. And so we started that Kids Can't Wait campaign. And I know, Cheryl, you were instrumental in that. And maybe this is where you could give a little shout out to Christy.
I can.
Because then it shows a little bit of that, not just Alberta, but then we're kind of branching out there all over. So maybe just to talk a little bit about the Kids Can't Wait, and then we can, springboard some other things onto that.
Sure. I think I'd start though with Mark, thank you, because you honored Karen and I just a moment ago, but I want to just honor you in the work that you're doing and the work that your center is doing. So I know as a host, you probably won't do that for yourself, so I'll do that for you now. So thanks. In terms of the Kids Can't Wait, we were really fortunate that within Canada in general, there are so many CACs that are willing to share information and resources wherever possible. And so the Snowflake Center in Winnipeg, Manitoba, had offered us an opportunity to use a video that they had produced, and that the production company that actually made the video was also offering to create an Alberta version of it. So the same video, but changing the wording on it so that it was Alberta based. So Christy, the executive director from the Snowflake Center in Manitoba, reached out to myself and Boost in Toronto and said, could you guys use this? And this fellow from the production company indicates that he can do it as an Alberta-based model video if you want. And in fact, did that without cost because he wanted to contribute back to the community. And that really is such I think, a rooted thing that happens with this work that we do. It's about wanting to contribute to the community, and so many different people want to do that. So we were fortunate that the Snowflake Center recognized that they had an opportunity that they could share the resources. And so I chatted with my folks across the CACs in Alberta, and kind of everybody got things rolling in terms of supporting that process. And basically the video is about the idea or notion that kids are without some protective factors right now, and we need to ensure that we can reach out any way possible, and encourage the community to reach out in any way possible for families they might be worried about, and they might be able to offer support to those families or those children. So it's about the recognition that we can't wait during a pandemic to reach out in any way possible. We need to do it now, through whatever mechanisms we have, and most of them are remotely, but we still have mechanisms to reach out. And that's really, I think, the underlying theme and message that we want to get out in that one phrase, Kids Can't Wait. And I just welcome you guys to add anything else that I might have missed.
Well, pretty much you did a bang on job there. That's why we like these little conversations with each other. So, and you know what, that's one of the things my kudos to you. Like, honestly, I'd go even further. The job is easy in a way when you're gifted to work with the people that we're all gifted to work with. Our teams are really solid people who care about kids and families and our organizations. There's a huge amount of pride we all take in not only our own organizations, but I take pride in what the Zebra Center is and what Caribou and what Calgary area. And I think we all do the same thing where we're talking, and it doesn't matter where a child is abused in this province, they're going to have a place to go to share their story and feel safe and feel secure. And I my hat's off again. I just the work that's being done in this province, I think, is outstanding, and to be able to be a part of it is to me is exciting daily. One of the things I'd say is people have always, when you talk about how people can get involved, and I would say for anybody that's watching or viewing or does after, it's to share this story, but to go on the Alberta CACs .ca website, find the CAC that's in your area, like it, share it. We're all on social media. We cannot get people to share enough. I noticed when we hit something that really hits a nerve, or people like, okay, I want to share that, you get 35 shares. Well, in order for us to really get to the top, we need to have 35 shares on everything. So I promote with everybody to do that. But this is part of our educational thing that we've had through the pandemic, and love to have both of you on here. And I know we're working towards our next one is internet safety and child luring.
That's great.
Because that is, as we all know, that we're asking our children to be at home on learning online, and with that comes all kinds of risks. So we're pretty excited about that upcoming. So that'll be our next one. But I want to talk a little bit, if I could, a huge thank you to the Calgary and area supporters and the Central Alberta, our supporters, and Cheryl up in the Zebra Center. The number of radio stations and news media and online print where people are supporting us in each of our communities. I can't go through all of them and thank them individually, but what I can do is group thank them. All of those people who have the courage to support the work that we're doing in our child advocacy centers, because it's important work and they validate the work we do. So from myself and Karen and Cheryl, we thank all of our people who, and I use the word courage and bravery, because not everybody really wants to get involved in abuse, but those that have chosen to follow us in our what we're doing, our hats off to each of you, and we thank you for being a part of the journey and the team. So I don't know if I could wrap it up there, but if I just went to each of you, and I won't put you on the spot by saying, hey, what's your dreams and hopes and wishes? But if we could just, just share one tidbit, and then we can wrap it up. Something we haven't talked about, if there's anything out there.
I don't have a tidbit. I will say thank you to both of you for your partnership and for your leadership and for pulling us together. For us, and I know I know that I speak for all of us when I say it really is about working ourselves out of a job and promoting what we know works, and raising awareness about what advocacy centers do and about child maltreatment, so that we can do less of it and have healthier communities and healthier kids. And so anytime we can create a platform and a bigger voice together, I think that's our opportunity. And I'm really grateful to be able to do that with you both and with all the CACs in the province and the country. So honored to be here, and thanks for pulling us together today, Mark.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for joining me.
No, and I would reaffirm everything that Karen just said. Well said, and what you had said, Mark. Probably the one thing that I think I would love to see some traction on, or a dream in the next year or two, is the more national voice. I think Alberta is becoming strong in a voice and figuring out where we land together in this work that we're doing. And I think that's fantastic. And I like to see Alberta become part of that national voice in a very meaningful way. Because I think when we started this conversation today, we talked about the US having a very strong network, and it is national. So I think that's kind of our next frontier. And I look forward to doing that work with you guys together.
Yeah. No, that's the journey being on this is, I honestly, I couldn't have picked two better people to be on the journey with, and the rest of our CAC network in Alberta is one. I think we've got a lot of strengths and we got a lot of good things are going to come out of it. The one thing I just would wrap it up is I would say to people, come and join the journey and join us working with one child and one family at a time in a collective group to better their life and give them an opportunity to be successful in their future. So thanks for taking the time to be a part of it today. Both Karen and Cheryl, thank you very much for the work you do. And thanks everybody for being a part of it, and share, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.